The boy woke up early that morning even before the sun had fully risen. His room was small and bare, with a single bed pushed against the wall and a worn-out dresser with a few clothes folded neatly on top. The floor creaked under his feet as he got up. He didn't have much, but he always tried to keep things tidy. His family depended on him in small ways, and he had learned early that every little responsibility counted. Breakfast was simple, some toast and a cup of tea, but even that felt like a treat some days. His mother worked 2 jobs and his father had been gone for years. The boy had learned to carry himself with quiet strength. He had dreams, sure, but most of the time, survival came first. School was far, so he walked, backpack slung over his shoulder, hoping the shoes he had weren't too worn down for the long walk. On his way, he passed familiar sights: the corner store where the clerk always nodded at him, the small park where younger kids played, and the old diner near the edge of town. The diner smelled of coffee and fried eggs, and sometimes, when he passed by, he could hear the quiet chatter of the few people already sitting inside. He never had much to spend, but he liked to watch the world go by for a few moments before the long day began. That morning, like most mornings, he felt the weight of the world pressing on his shoulders. He was 15, but he carried responsibilities far beyond his age. He had younger siblings to look after, bills that never seemed to end and dreams that felt too big to reach. Still, he walked with his head held high, determined not to let the hardships around him shape who he was inside. By the time school ended, the sun was already high, burning through the thin clouds in the sky. He had saved a little money from odd jobs over the past few weeks and decided to treat himself. Not something fancy, just a small meal at the diner, maybe a sandwich and a drink. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small victory in a life that rarely offered them. When he entered the diner, he noticed the usual crowd, a few workers on break, a couple of older men reading the newspaper, and in the corner, an elderly couple sitting together quietly. They looked tired, but there was a warmth in their presence. The man had thinning gray hair and wore a worn-out jacket, while the woman's hands were delicate, folded on the table in front of her. They smiled at the boy as he walked past, and he nodded politely in return. He placed his order at the counter, watching the cook move efficiently behind the line. The smell of frying eggs and bread filled the small space, comforting in a way he didn't expect. He found a booth near the window, sitting alone for a moment, savoring the quiet. Outside, children ran across the street. A dog barked in the distance, and a bus rumbled by, shaking the ground slightly. It was ordinary, simple, but for him it was enough to feel a tiny sense of peace. That's when he noticed the elderly couple again. The woman reached into her purse, and the man patted his coat pocket, searching. Something seemed off. Their smiles faltered, replaced by a look of worry. The boy realized they were struggling. Perhaps they had forgotten their wallet, or maybe they didn't have enough money that day. His heart tugged at him, but he hesitated. He barely had enough for his own meal. He watched quietly, trying to decide what to do. He remembered his mother's words from long ago. Kindness is never wasted, even when the world is hard. He had carried that lesson in his heart, though it wasn't always easy to act on it. Seeing the couple's anxious faces made something inside him stir. He knew the right thing to do. He stood up and walked toward their table. The couple looked up, surprised by the sudden attention. "Excuse me," he said softly. I can cover your meal today." The woman's eyes widened. "Oh no, young man, you don't have to do that," she said, waving him off politely. "I want to," he insisted, smiling gently. "It's no trouble." The man shook his head, a mix of pride and embarrassment crossing his face. "We can't accept that," he murmured. But the boy had made up his mind. He paid for their meal at the counter, counting every coin in his pocket before handing over the rest to the cashier. He didn't think about the fact that he would have very little left for the next day. What mattered in that moment was helping someone who needed it. The couple thanked him, their voices trembling slightly. The woman's eyes glistened with tears, and the man offered a shy, heartfelt smile. "You're a good boy," the woman said softly. "Thank you." He felt a warmth spread through his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't money or success. It was the quiet satisfaction of doing something that mattered. Something human. He returned to his seat for a moment, watching them eat, seeing the relief on their faces. After finishing his own small meal, he left the diner, stepping back into the late afternoon sun. The street seemed a little brighter now, and the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. He walked home slowly, thinking about how small acts of kindness could change someone's day. Even when life was hard, even when he had so little, he realized that giving could make a world of difference. When he arrived home, he helped his younger siblings with their homework. He listened patiently as they recounted their day at school, smiling and laughing despite the exhaustion that clung to him. His mother returned home later, tired from her long shift, and he helped her with dinner, making sure everything was ready before she could even sit down. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the day replayed in his mind, the worried faces of the elderly couple, the small feeling of pride when he paid for their meal, and the quiet gratitude in their eyes. He felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel, hope, not just for himself, but for the world around him. He thought about how kindness could spread, how one simple gesture could touch people in ways he might never fully understand. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it brought a sense of calm. Tomorrow would be another day of challenges, another day of struggles, but he knew that he had the power to make a difference, however small. And for him, that was enough to keep going. The next morning, the boy woke up with a quiet sense of purpose. The memory of the elderly couple's smiles lingered in his mind, a small spark of warmth in the midst of the daily struggles he faced. Even as he got dressed in his worn-out clothes and laced up his shoes that had seen better days, he carried a quiet pride with him. What he had done yesterday felt important, even if it seemed like a small thing in the grand scheme of life. He left the house and walked toward the bus stop, his backpack bouncing lightly against his back. The streets were alive with movement, shopkeepers opening their stores, children heading to school, and the distant hum of cars filling the air. He noticed familiar faces nodding as he passed, neighbors who had come to know him as a quiet, hard-working boy who rarely complained. There was a rhythm to the streets he had grown up in, a rhythm that he felt in his bones even on days when life felt especially heavy. When he reached school, he slipped into his usual routine. Classes went by in a blur, lessons mixing together, teachers talking about things he sometimes struggled to fully grasp. But he tried. He asked questions, took notes, and did his best, because he believed education might be the only way to change the life he had been born into. Still, his thoughts kept drifting back to the diner, to the elderly couple, and to the feeling of having made a small difference in someone's life. After school, he didn't head straight home. Instead, he took a slightly longer route, walking past the diner again. He couldn't help but glance inside. The couple was there just like yesterday, smiling and talking quietly with each other. They waved at him when they noticed him, and he returned the gesture, feeling a warmth spread in his chest. The diner felt different this time. It was quieter, more personal. He ordered a small snack, just enough to keep himself going until he got home. He found a corner booth and sat down, watching the world through the window. He saw people passing by, children laughing, a delivery truck rumbling down the street. Everything seemed ordinary, but he felt a subtle change in the air, as if the small act of kindness he had done yesterday had left a trace in the world around him. The elderly couple approached him as he sat. The woman carried a gentle smile, and the man's eyes crinkled with gratitude. "You didn't have to do that yesterday," the woman said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "But it meant more than you can imagine." The boy shook his head, trying to hide the lump in his throat. "I just wanted to help," he said quietly. "It wasn't much. Not much." The man said, chuckling lightly, "It was everything to us. We were in a difficult spot and you stepped in without thinking twice. That's rare these days." The boy felt a strange mix of pride and humility. He had never expected anyone to notice or remember his actions, and yet here they were, expressing gratitude in a way that touched him deeply. For a moment, he allowed himself to feel good about what he had done, even though he knew life would soon demand his attention again. As he walked home later that afternoon, he noticed small signs of life reflecting kindness in unexpected places. A neighbor helped another carry groceries. A street vendor shared extra bread with a child who had no money. And even small gestures like holding a door or offering a smile seemed to ripple through the neighborhood. The boy realized that kindness was contagious, spreading quietly from one person to another. Back at home, he helped his siblings with homework, listening patiently as they struggled with math problems and spelling words. His mother returned from her early shift, tired but smiling when she saw her children being cared for. "You've been busy, haven't you?" she asked, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "Just helping them," he replied simply, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. There was no need for exaggeration. His mother knew him well enough to see the effort he put into everything he did. That evening, as he prepared for bed, he heard a quiet knock at the door. Curious, he opened it to find a neighbor standing there with a small envelope in hand. "Someone dropped this by for you," the neighbor said. "Said it was a little reward for your kindness." The boy took the envelope cautiously, peering inside. There was a small note handwritten expressing thanks for his generosity, along with a few dollars, enough to buy a small meal. He was surprised and touched. It was a reminder that people noticed even when he thought they didn't. The world wasn't as harsh as it sometimes felt. The next few days passed in a similar rhythm. He went to school, walked the streets, helped his family, and returned to the diner whenever he could. Each visit he saw the elderly couple smiling more, their spirits lifted. They would sometimes wave or offer a few words of thanks. The boy didn't expect anything in return. Seeing them happy was enough. One afternoon, the diner owner approached him quietly. "You know," he said, lowering his voice slightly, "what you did for that couple. People are talking about it. A few folks even mentioned it online." The boy froze for a moment. "Online?" he asked, not fully understanding. "Yes," the owner replied with a small smile. "A neighbor shared the story on a local page. People are noticing your kindness. It's inspiring them." The boy felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride, disbelief, and a quiet nervousness all swirled together. He had never imagined that his small act could reach beyond the walls of the diner. Yet, here it was. Proof that even one person's kindness could ripple outward, touching lives in ways he couldn't fully see. That evening, he sat by his window, looking out at the street below. Children played, neighbors greeted each other, and the city lights began to flicker on as darkness crept in. He thought about the world he lived in, the hardships, the struggles, the small victories that often went unnoticed. And he realized that perhaps he had stumbled onto something important, that even in a world that often seemed unfair, acts of generosity and kindness could create pockets of light. He didn't know it yet, but his story was about to take an unexpected turn. Something bigger than he had ever imagined was coming. For now he focused on the little things, the meals he could afford, the smiles he could share, the lives he could touch in quiet, meaningful ways. That night, as he lay in bed, he reflected on the ripple effect of kindness. He thought about the elderly couple, the diner staff, the neighbors, and even the strangers online who had read about his actions. He felt a connection to something larger than himself, a reminder that life was not just about survival. It was about making a difference, however small, in the lives of others. Sleep came slowly, but with it came a sense of purpose. He dreamed not of riches or fame, but of a world where small acts of generosity could change the course of someone's day, perhaps even their life. And deep down, he hoped that one day, kindness would find its way back to him in ways he could never anticipate. The following morning, the boy woke up feeling the usual weight of responsibility on his shoulders, but there was a quiet excitement lingering in his chest. Even though he didn't fully understand it, he had a sense that something was changing. The gratitude from the elderly couple, the small note from a neighbor, and the whispers around the diner had all planted a seed of hope in his heart. He got ready for school, like every other day. The worn shoes scraped lightly against the cracked pavement as he walked. His backpack felt heavier than usual, not because of books, but because of the thoughts swirling in his mind. He wondered if anyone else had noticed what he had done for the elderly couple. Maybe his act of kindness had touched more than just their hearts. School went by in its familiar rhythm. Teachers spoke, students whispered, and the boy tried to keep up with his lessons. He found it harder to focus today, his mind wandering to the diner, the couple, and the small ripple he might have caused. Each thought reminded him that even small gestures could create unseen waves, changing lives quietly but meaningfully. After school, he decided to take a detour to the diner, as he had done several times since the incident. When he walked in, the familiar smells of coffee, fried eggs, and warm bread enveloped him. The elderly couple was already there, smiling and chatting quietly. The woman waved at him, her eyes shining with gratitude, and the man gave him a nod that felt like a silent thank you. He approached their table, smiling softly. "Good afternoon," he said. "Good afternoon, young man," the woman replied warmly. "We were just talking about how kind you are. Everyone here seems to agree that you have a special heart." The boy felt his cheeks warm. "I just wanted to help," he said quietly, not wanting to make a big deal of it. "Helping others isn't small," the man said, his voice gentle. "Sometimes it's the most important thing a person can do." The boy looked down at his hands, a mixture of pride and humility washing over him. He didn't realize that his small gesture had sparked a chain of appreciation beyond the diner walls. People had started talking quietly about the kind-hearted boy who had helped those in need, and the story had begun to travel further than he could have imagined. After leaving the diner, he continued his walk home, his mind buzzing with thoughts. He noticed small things he hadn't paid attention to before. A neighbor helping another carry heavy groceries, a shopkeeper offering extra food to someone in need, and children sharing toys without being asked. The world around him seemed a little kinder, a little brighter. Later that day, something unexpected happened. As he returned from a quick errand, he noticed a man standing near his house, watching him intently. The man was well-dressed, wearing a suit that looked expensive and polished shoes that gleamed in the sunlight. He carried himself with confidence, but there was a gentleness in his eyes, a kind of curiosity that made the boy stop in his tracks. The man approached him slowly. "Hello," he said politely. "Are you the young man who helped the elderly couple at the diner?" The boy blinked, surprised. "Yes, that was me," he said cautiously. "I've heard about what you did," the man continued, smiling warmly. "I want to tell you that it was an extraordinary thing. Most people your age wouldn't think twice, yet you stepped in without hesitation. That says a lot about your character." The boy's heart raced. He didn't know what to say. He had never met anyone who seemed so genuinely impressed by something he thought was simple and ordinary. "Thank you," he murmured. I just wanted to help." The man nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "And that is why I am here. You see, people like you are rare. People who care enough to act, even when life hasn't given them much, are rare. I want to offer you an opportunity, a chance to learn, grow, and reach your potential. Something tells me you have a bright future ahead, and I want to help you get there." The boy stared at him, disbelief and hope mixing together in a whirlwind. I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Say yes," the man replied gently. "Say yes to a chance to change your life. I can help with school expenses, mentorship, and guidance. I can introduce you to people who can help you reach your dreams. But first you have to believe in yourself the way I believe in you." The boy felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He had dreamed of opportunities like this, but they had always felt out of reach. Yet here was someone offering a hand, recognizing his kindness and potential. He nodded slowly, feeling a mix of excitement, fear, and gratitude. "Yes," he said finally. "I'll do it." The man smiled warmly. "Good. This is the beginning of something important, not just for you, but for everyone whose life you will touch along the way." In the following days, the boy's life began to shift subtly but surely. The millionaire arranged for a meeting with a local mentor who could guide him through educational opportunities. He received books, school supplies, and advice on how to balance studies with life's responsibilities. The boy was careful, though. He didn't want anyone to think he had changed who he was. He remained humble, thoughtful, and focused on helping others wherever he could. Word of his story spread quietly through the neighborhood. People admired his kindness and resilience. The elderly couple, now more cheerful than they had been in years, would sometimes share the boy's story with friends. Even the diner staff spoke of him proudly, telling customers about the young man who had made a difference with no expectation of reward. Yet, despite the attention, the boy never let it distract him from his daily life. He still helped his siblings, supported his mother, and completed small jobs to contribute to the household. The new opportunities were exciting, but he understood that true growth didn't come from recognition alone. It came from consistent effort, humility, and the desire to make a positive impact. One evening, as he sat at the window looking out at the neighborhood, he reflected on how quickly life could change. Just a few days ago, he had been a boy worried about paying for a simple meal. Now his kindness had opened doors he never imagined existed, yet he knew that none of this would matter if he lost sight of who he was. He thought about the ripple effect of small actions, the elderly couple smiling, neighbors helping each other, and now a stranger offering guidance and opportunities. He realized that life was interconnected, and that each gesture of kindness, no matter how small, could create waves that reached far beyond what anyone could see. The boy also recognized the responsibility that came with this new attention. People were looking up to him, inspired by his actions. He understood that he had to continue leading by example, showing that true strength came not from wealth or status, but from the choices one made every day. At the diner the next afternoon, the elderly couple greeted him warmly. "You have changed so much in such a short time," the woman said, her voice filled with pride. The boy smiled softly. "I've only started," he replied. "There's still a lot to learn, and I want to keep helping people wherever I can." The man nodded, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "You've already made a difference in our lives," he said. "Keep doing what you're doing, and the world will continue to notice." As the boy left the diner that day, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that challenges would still come, that life would not suddenly become easy, but he also knew that he had a choice, to approach each day with kindness, courage, and determination. And that choice, he realized, was more powerful than any fortune or opportunity that could come his way. That night, he lay in bed thinking about the journey that had started with a single act of kindness. He thought about the people whose lives he had touched, the strangers who were now paying attention, and the possibilities that lay ahead. Hope and determination filled his heart, a quiet fire that promised he would continue to strive, learn, and give back. For the first time in a long while, he felt that the world was not just a place to survive. It was a place where his actions could matter, where one small act could change everything, and he fell asleep with a sense of peace, ready to face the days ahead, knowing that life was full of surprises, both challenging and beautiful. The morning sun had barely risen when the boy woke up, his mind buzzing with anticipation. He didn't yet know exactly what awaited him that day, but he sensed that something important was about to happen. The previous days had been filled with quiet surprises, the recognition, the encouragement, and the feeling that his small act of kindness had not gone unnoticed. But today felt different, heavier with expectation and possibility. After quickly getting dressed, he left the house and walked through the familiar streets of his neighborhood. The pavement felt warmer under his worn shoes as he made his way toward the place where he had been told to meet the man who had noticed his kindness. Every step carried both nervousness and hope. What if this opportunity was as big as it seemed? Could a single act of helping an elderly couple truly lead to something life-changing? He pushed the questions aside, focusing on the moment ahead. The man was waiting outside a small cafe near the edge of town. When the boy arrived, he could see him adjusting his tie and glancing around, his posture calm yet confident. The millionaire smiled when he saw the boy approaching. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I'm glad you could make it." The boy nodded, feeling a mix of respect and nervous excitement. "Good morning, sir," he replied, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. "Please call me David," the man said. "We're not here to talk about titles or formality. I want to talk about you, your potential, and how I can help you make the most of your future." They walked inside the cafe and found a quiet corner. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods filled the air, but the boy barely noticed. His mind was focused entirely on the conversation ahead. David began to speak, outlining a plan that seemed almost too good to be true. He wanted to provide financial support for the boy's education, offer mentorship, and introduce him to people who could help him grow in ways he had never imagined. The boy listened, barely able to comprehend the generosity being offered. It wasn't just money, it was guidance, opportunity, and a belief in him that he had never experienced before. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "I've never had someone believe in me like this." "That's exactly why I'm here," David said kindly. "I saw your actions and I saw your heart. That matters far more than any wealth or status. You've shown courage, kindness, and integrity. These qualities are rare, and they are exactly what will help you succeed in life." The boy's mind raced. He thought about his family, the struggles at home, and the sacrifices his mother made every day. Could this opportunity really change everything? Could he take what seemed like a miracle and turn it into something meaningful, not just for himself but for those around him? He nodded slowly, feeling a mixture of fear, hope, and excitement. I want to try," he said. David smiled. "Good, trying is the first step." But this isn't just about you. This is about the impact you can have on the world. You've already started by helping that elderly couple. Imagine what you could do with the right support and guidance. That's why I'm investing in you." Over the next few hours, David outlined a detailed plan. He would cover school fees, provide resources for learning, and introduce the boy to programs and people who could guide him. More importantly, he emphasized that the boy's character and values were what mattered most. "Always stay true to yourself," David advised. "Never let success change who you are. Your kindness and integrity are your greatest strengths." The boy left the cafe that afternoon with a head full of plans and a heart full of hope. For the first time, he felt that his life could take a new direction. The possibilities stretched out before him like a wide, open road, full of opportunities that had previously seemed out of reach. But he also knew that with these opportunities came responsibility. He couldn't waste this chance. The days that followed were filled with new experiences and challenges. He began attending tutoring sessions, learning new skills and receiving guidance on how to navigate both school and life. David remained a constant presence, checking in regularly, offering advice, encouragement, and sometimes a simple word of reassurance when the boy felt overwhelmed. Even with these new opportunities, the boy never lost sight of his roots. He continued to help his mother with household chores, support his siblings with homework, and contribute to the home in small but meaningful ways. He understood that his success would be hollow if he forgot where he came from, and he wanted to ensure that the people who had shaped him could feel pride in his journey. Word of his progress began to spread quietly through the community. Neighbors who had witnessed his acts of kindness smiled with approval when they saw him working diligently. The elderly couple, now more cheerful than they had been in years, expressed pride and happiness whenever they saw him. Their small smiles and words of encouragement reminded him why he had acted with kindness in the first place. One afternoon, the boy returned to the diner to grab a quick meal. The elderly couple was there, as always, and they waved at him with warmth in their eyes. "You're doing so well," the woman said softly. "We heard about the tutoring, the mentorship. It's wonderful to see you growing," the boy smiled humbly. "I couldn't have done it without you, without all the little lessons I've learned from people around me," he said. "Everything I do, I want to make a difference like you've made in my life." The man nodded. "You already are making a difference. You've inspired more people than you realize. Keep going. Keep believing." As the weeks turned into months, the boy began to see tangible results from the support and mentorship. His schoolwork improved, his confidence grew, and he discovered new interests and talents he hadn't explored before. He realized that opportunities were not just about money. They were about guidance, exposure, and the belief that someone sees your potential. Despite all the progress, he never let himself become arrogant or complacent. He still remembered the small moments, the hungry couple, the quiet act of paying for a meal, the warmth of simple human connection. These memories kept him grounded, reminding him that success was measured not just by achievements, but by the impact one had on others. One evening, as he walked home under the dim glow of streetlights, he thought about the journey that had brought him here, from a small act of kindness in a diner to the doors opening before him now. He realized that life had a way of rewarding those who acted with sincerity and courage. He understood that the Millionaire's support was not just about changing his circumstances, it was a recognition of the values he had already embodied. At home, he helped his siblings with homework and prepared a simple dinner for the family. His mother returned from her shift, tired but smiling, and the boy felt a quiet pride in knowing he could make her life a little easier. The thought of giving back, of lifting others even as he was lifted, filled him with a sense of purpose that went beyond any financial reward. Before bed, he sat by the window, looking at the stars scattered across the night sky. He reflected on everything that had happened, the kindness that had set this journey in motion, the opportunities that had followed, and the people who had believed in him along the way. He realized that life was unpredictable, sometimes harsh, but also full of unexpected moments of grace. And in that quiet, reflective moment, he made a silent promise to himself. He would continue to help those in need, to act with kindness without expectation, and to use the opportunities he had been given to create positive change. He understood that true success was not just about achieving dreams for himself, but about touching lives and inspiring hope in others. As he lay down to sleep that night, he felt a sense of peace and determination. The journey was far from over, but he now understood that every choice mattered. Every act of kindness, every effort to grow, and every moment of integrity could shape not only his life, but the lives of those around him. And with that understanding, he drifted into a deep, restful sleep, ready to face the days ahead with courage, hope, and an unwavering commitment to goodness. The days after the boy began receiving guidance and support from David were filled with learning, growth, and a sense of purpose that he had never known before. Each morning he woke up with a determination to do better, to learn more, and to make the most of the opportunities he had been given. The boy was no longer just surviving. He was thriving, though he never forgot the struggles that had shaped him. His mornings started early. He helped his younger siblings get ready for school, made a quick breakfast for the family, and then walked to his tutoring sessions. Along the way, he noticed familiar faces, neighbors waving, shopkeepers smiling, and he realized that the community seemed to look at him differently now. But he remained humble, nodding politely and focusing on his tasks rather than the attention. He knew that real growth came from effort, not recognition. At school, he applied himself like never before. He asked questions, completed assignments diligently, and even helped classmates who struggled with lessons. Teachers began noticing a change in him. His confidence, his determination, and his kindness stood out. They encouraged him, offering advice and support, but he never let it get to his head. He remembered the words David had shared with him. Stay true to yourself. Never let success change your heart. The mentorship sessions with David became a part of his life. They would sit together in quiet spaces, discussing not only schoolwork but also life lessons. David taught him about responsibility, perseverance, and making choices that reflected his values. He encouraged the boy to think about how he could use his opportunities to help others, not just himself. These lessons began to shape the boy's vision for his future. One afternoon, David suggested something that made the boy nervous but excited at the same time. Why don't you share your story with others? He said. People will be inspired by what you've done. You've shown that kindness matters and your journey can help others believe in themselves. The boy hesitated. He was shy by nature and didn't like the idea of attention, but he also realized that his story wasn't about him. It was about showing that small acts of generosity could ripple outward and change lives. So he agreed. With David's guidance, he prepared to speak at a local community center. He told his story simply, from the heart, about helping the elderly couple, about the struggles he faced, and about the unexpected ways life had rewarded kindness. The audience listened quietly at first, then began to respond with smiles, nods, and applause. Some were moved to tears. Parents whispered to their children about the importance of kindness. Teachers praised the boy for his humility, and neighbors came forward to shake his hand. For the boy, it was a moment of realization. He could inspire others, not just through words but through action. Life at home remained grounded. Even with the growing opportunities, he continued to help his mother, guide his siblings, and contribute wherever he could. He didn't let the changes distract him from the people who had always mattered most. Each small act of care at home reminded him why he had started down this path of kindness in the first place. Weeks turned into months, and the boy began to see the tangible results of his hard work. His grades improved and he became more confident in expressing himself. He also discovered talents he hadn't noticed before: writing, speaking, and helping others solve problems. David encouraged him to explore these talents, reminding him that potential was not limited by background or circumstance. One evening, the elderly couple came to visit. They had brought a small basket of fruits and baked goods as a token of appreciation. "We wanted to see how you are doing," the woman said softly, her eyes filled with pride. The boy smiled warmly. "I'm doing well thanks to you and all the people who believed in me," he said. "Your story made me realize that helping others matters more than anything else." The man nodded. "And you've shown that the kindness you gave to us has grown into something even bigger. You're helping so many people now just by being yourself." The boy felt a lump in his throat. It was overwhelming to see the full circle of what had started as a simple act of paying for their meal. He realized that life had a way of returning kindness multiplied, and he felt both humbled and inspired. As the years passed, the boy continued to grow under David's mentorship and through his own determination. He applied to scholarships, attended workshops, and explored opportunities that once seemed unreachable. Every step of the way, he carried the lessons of humility, kindness, and perseverance that had guided him from the beginning. Despite his growing success, he never forgot the small acts that had defined him. Whenever he had the chance, he helped those in need, buying groceries for struggling families, tutoring younger students for free, and volunteering at local community centers. He understood that wealth or status was meaningless if it didn't come with the responsibility to uplift others. Word of his story continued to spread, inspiring people far beyond his neighborhood. Newspapers and local media covered his journey, highlighting the young boy whose small act of kindness had set off a chain of positive change. Yet through all the attention, he remained grounded, humble, and focused on the values that had brought him this far. One day, as he walked home after tutoring a group of younger children, he paused at the diner where it all began. The elderly couple was there enjoying a quiet meal. When they saw him, they waved and smiled. He walked over and they embraced briefly, a gesture of warmth and connection that reminded him of how far he had come. "I never imagined that helping us would lead to all this," the woman said softly. "You inspired me," the boy replied. "And I've learned that every small act can make a difference, even if we don't see it immediately." The man nodded. "You've taken it further than anyone could have imagined. We're proud of you." The boy looked around at the diner, the familiar smells and sounds filling him with nostalgia. This was where it had all started, a small, simple act of kindness that had grown into something much larger. And he realized that life was full of these moments where choices mattered more than circumstances. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about the journey he had taken, from a struggling boy with little money and big dreams, to a young man with opportunities, guidance, and the ability to help others. He understood that life had a way of rewarding those who acted with sincerity, courage, and compassion. He made a promise to himself to continue living with kindness, to help where he could, and to remain true to the values that had guided him from the start. He understood that success was not measured only by wealth or recognition, but by the lives touched, the smiles created, and the hope inspired. The next morning, he woke with the same sense of determination that had carried him this far. The path ahead was still full of challenges, but he was ready. He had learned that even when life seemed difficult, even when resources were scarce, a single act of kindness could change everything, not just for others, but for himself as well. And so he walked forward into the day, grounded in humility, filled with hope, and guided by the knowledge that every choice mattered. The boy who once worried about paying for a simple meal had grown into someone who could touch lives, inspire change, and lead by example. His story became a reminder to everyone who heard it that kindness is never wasted, the courage and compassion can open doors in ways unimaginable, and that one person's good heart has the power to change the world. Even as he faced new challenges, he carried with him the lessons of the past, the warmth of the elderly couple's smiles, the guidance of David, and the quiet moments of reflection that taught him the value of humility and perseverance. Life had given him a second chance, and he knew that it was now his responsibility to use it wisely, not just for himself, but for all the people whose lives he could touch along the way. In the end, the boy understood something essential. Life was not about what you had, but about who you were, the choices you made, and the kindness you showed. And with that understanding, he embraced each day with courage, compassion, and hope, ready to continue the journey that had begun with a single, simple act of generosity.